Welcome to the Reflective Dialogue podcast. I'm Larissa.
And I'm Shonda.
And we are so excited today because we are interviewing our brand new interim CEO, Dr. Calvin Ward Jr.
Yes.
How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for inviting me. This is very exciting. My first podcast interview.
Oh,
well, awesome. Yeah. Well, we are happy that you have agreed to join us today. We believe that our professional development specialist network, the community, is excited to hear from you and excited to hear what your vision is. People always ask me, what is the CEO thinking of? What should we anticipate coming up in the next year, 2 or 3 years? So welcome to the podcast.
I'm delighted to be here and eager to share some of my thoughts with you today.
All right, so we'll just jump right in, if you don't mind. Larissa, sure. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, awesome. So our first question is, what drew you to early childhood education?
So I really came to this work quite by accident. It was not my intention. Of course, I come from a long line of educators. And if you read my bio, you know that my mother was a Head Start teacher many years and retired from a program. But I remember my grandfather saying, listen, if you're going to go to college, don't go into education, because every one of his children in some way were educators. And so I avoided the profession. But I did come back to it almost by accident when my aunt, who after being in the Air Force for 4 years, suggested that I go to work for a Head Start program. And that was it. Once I started working for Head Start, I had this fever in education and love for early childhood education. And of course, getting my CDA, I attributed that often to my love for this field because it really cemented my entry into early childhood education.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Wonderful. So you mentioned getting your CDAs, which is incredible. How did obtaining your CDAs both benefit you as an early childhood educator and also change the trajectory of your career?
So as I said, I think it cemented my entry into the field. I was hired as a teacher aide back in 1991 and was put right into a CDA program just as part of their professional development experiences that they offered all their teachers and teacher aides. Of course, I had a lot of experiences coming into the job because I had been in the Air Force for 4 years. And so I really came to the profession like a sponge, really soaking up everything. And taking those 3 entry-level child development courses really opened up a world for me that I didn't anticipate, right? It was just a requirement of the job, but I dove in and I really believe that it sparked a curiosity about how children grow and develop that I still have to this day. And I do attribute it to my curiosity and fascination with child development, finding myself within our career field, and just launching me on this lifelong learning path that I don't think I might have had except for the CDA. And so I'm glad that that my sequence was the CDA, then the bachelor's degree, then the master's degree, and ultimately the PhD in early childhood, because I do believe it was the right sequence for me, coming from outside the field with very little context around how children grow and learn and develop. It was the right sequence because I had to prove that I knew what I was doing with young children from an outside observer who was an expert, right? And so, and it was a day-long experience. I think now the process is very different. I'm from the old school CDA where you spent pretty much all day. The morning was observation, where someone was coming in observing you with young children. And then the afternoon was this meeting that you had with your CDA representative and other folks who were involved in your career, like your center manager or your teacher, for example. And there was this panel that you sat in front of and answered questions about your ideas around teaching and child development. So it was a really impactful experience. And I remember it to this day and had a long relationship with my CDA rep, who was a local representative who I would see from time to time in my career, and just enjoyed that part of being indoctrinated or onboarding, so to speak, into a career field that I love today.
Oh, awesome. Were you more nervous during the CDA observation or defending your dissertation?
Oh, that's a great question. So I was nervous in both experiences, but I was more nervous while getting my CDA. And let me tell you why.
Okay.
Because children can be so unpredictable. And so you plan for that day, you have your lesson plan, you're going through your day, and then children decide, this is my environment. We're going to do what I want to do. And good luck to you, right? So much more volatile circumstance, right? When you have 24-year-olds, in a classroom environment, and you've got this observer who's in there for the first time. So definitely getting my CDA was more nerve-wracking than defending a dissertation with a bunch of PhDs who I might say they were scary, but not as scary as 4-year-olds.
That's funny. That's funny. Alrighty. If you were to write a book on leadership, what would be essential for learners to know?
So this is a great question, because I do believe everybody can be a leader in their own space. And so the closest book that I've written around leadership was the Men Do Stay book that I wrote a number of years ago around how to recruit and retain male early childhood teachers. And I provide some suggestions or tips around retaining men, particularly men of color, early childhood space. But if I were to write a book that was solely on leadership, I probably would focus on this idea that leaders need a lot of tools in their toolkit in order to be successful. And they need a lot of mentors, right? And so I believe I would focus on tennis. I'm an avid tennis player. I love the profession. I love the history of tennis. But think about tennis for a second.
Okay.
A professional tennis player goes through the training that's required of any athlete, right? And they have a coach that kind of leads them through strategy and approaches. But when the tennis match starts, the coach goes away and you're prepared, and it's you against the other opponent, and you have to put all those tools into play to try to win the match. And it's not always the best coach. It's the best player that wins and who can implement their strategy the best. But even the best player has a bad day and could lose the match, right? And so that's how leadership is. You have all the tools at your disposal. You should be a lifelong learner, picking up all the tools of the trade that you can. But really, when you are in a position of leadership, you may or may not get folks. You may or may not be able to influence people to follow you, right? But you do the best you can with the tools you have. And the more tools you have, the more likely you are to galvanize people around your vision and around your ideas. And so I would focus probably on the game of tennis and use a lot of analogies around that to kind of exploit the leadership that I try to employ, which is really servant leadership, right? I want people around me who I'm attempting to lead to know that there is no job in our organization that is without merit or value, and that me as a leader, I'm willing to do any job that's needed, right? And want to be part of a team more so than seen as this leader who is always dictating to the group what should or should not happen.
Okay, so you would say, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, that leaders also wash windows. And it's not beneath a leader to take some Windex and paper towels and get to work on the window.
There you go. Yeah. Because I think many of the large corporations that are so successful, I'm thinking of Disney and Oracle and all of those kinds of organizations, they do have the kind of leadership structure where the leader would never walk past a piece of paper and not pick it up. That the leader is just as important as any other person on the team, but the leader is not so important that they can't do the job of one of their fellow teammates.
Okay.
That's wonderful.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Several of the things that you've mentioned are what our webinars have been around. So we just did one last week on mentorship. That was cheerleading for the cheerleader. We're doing one today on 10 principles of childcare leadership. And then we have one coming up in July, I think, for servant leadership.
Oh, wonderful. I would not be the leader that I am today without having an array of mentors around me and sort of submitted to their ideas and their teachings and observed them for many years. And I'm thinking of a couple of people in my life that I really believe shaped a lot of my ideas around early childhood, but more importantly, how to lead an early childhood organization. Because what you have to remember is that most male teachers, because at my core, I'm a male teacher, right? Even by training, I have a bachelor's degree in early childhood. I was trained to teach. My academic preparation is around teaching. And so I had to learn all of the skills of leadership, and most of those skills were deposited or embedded within me by more competent peers and mentors in my life.
Wonderful.
Awesome. So as you have grown professionally and you've had different experiences and you've been promoted and now you're the interim CEO, how have you had to wear humility and or tuck your pride aside in order to continue being a servant leader and then a person that is continuously learning?
So I am a man of faith, and I think that has a lot to do with my wherewithal within this career field. Our field has many ups and downs. Most of that's related to the workforce challenges around poorly financing childcare in America. So as a teacher, I struggled. Think about this. As a teacher aide in 1992, I was making $4.25 an hour. When I got my CDA in 1992, I got a 50 cents raise. So I went from $4.25 to $4.75. And so as a male teacher, you can imagine, even if I had visions at that time of being married, I could not provide and support a family with $4.75 an hour. Even in 1992, I wouldn't have been able to do that. And so the pressure to move out of that field or to move up and become an administrator was immensely difficult to navigate. And I actually succumbed to that pressure. After teaching for maybe 5 years, I was promoted to center director and was earning more money, but I left my core, right?
Yeah.
And so the other thing I would say about that, being a man of faith, I had to be humble. I had to approach each job with humility, but I also struggled because it was not part of my core. And so I always had this sense of longing, right? Even though I moved into another path, I longed to be in front of young children, teaching them and watching them grow and nurturing their development. And so I always had to seek through my faith a new core and seek my love for teaching by duplicating some of my skills in others. And so I became this natural trainer as a center director, where I would work with teachers and say, listen, try this, or can you do that? And with humility, I was able to impact teachers and duplicate some of my skills. And you can't do that successfully without some humility embedded within your work.
Well, that's an awesome answer. Thank you so much for sharing. What have been some of your greatest lessons learned in leadership?
Yeah, so there was this wonderful quote. I can't remember who it is attributed to, but it goes something like this. I'm the leader, but there goes all of my followers, right? And the leader is pointing in a different direction, right? Because sometimes you could lead a group and they just won't follow you to save their lives, right? So that's one of my greatest lessons, that you always hope that those that are working with you will follow your leadership, right? It's always a hope and a dream and a desire, and you're excited when it comes true. But I've had many more nightmares than dreams in this this line of work. And you're always correcting yourself. You have to always be willing to change and be nimble and seek ways to evolve as a leader, right? And coming into this job at the council is really an awesome challenge because everyone at the council is really good at what they do.
Mm-hmm.
And leading experts is difficult, right? Mm-hmm. Leading people who are good at their jobs can be enormously fulfilling, but also a challenge because in some cases, not all cases, but in some cases, there's someone in the room with a better idea than you. Mm-hmm. So you have to be willing to accept the best idea.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
And I've learned that lesson that you want smart people around you, but you've got to be willing to take their advice every now and then.
That's
wow.
Wonderful.
That's really powerful as a leader to have acknowledged that. And it sounds like you believe that judgment starts with you first in order to effectively lead and to remain as a servant leader. You know, you have to judge yourself.
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
I was chuckling a little bit at your quote because it sounds a lot like that room of 4-year-olds that you were about to teach the CDA.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If you're looking for free professional development opportunities that are meaningful, speak specifically to the ECE community, and are presented by the leaders in the field, your search stops here. The Council presents the new 2020 Leadership and Learning webinar series, which offers over 30 interactive approaches to professional development running weekly through November. And it's not just for the PD specialists, it's for the whole ECE community. Why should you attend the webinar series, you ask? Each webinar is presented by early childhood industry experts. You can register to view each session live and to receive a link to the recording for any that have already happened. You can receive one in-service hour for each webinar you attend. And best of all, registration and attendance are completely free. Review our webinar catalog to find the perfect match for your training needs. And please share with your ECE community. Go to cba council.org/leadership-and-learning to register today.
So we want to get a little bit more into, what you're thinking, what you're feeling, what your vision is for the council now that you're here and you're with us.
Mm-hmm.
So I do have thoughts about that. And, we have a vision that's in place. It's on our website, and I'm sure many of you are familiar with that. Of course, my personal vision for the council right now is to view the CDA as the flagship early childhood credential in the nation and even in the world, as we sort of think about expanding our footprint worldwide. And as the flagship, I think we have to be careful to make sure that that is our main focus out of all the array of services and credentials or programs that we may provide to our community. We have to remember that the CDA is at our core and is our central business. Mm-hmm. And so my focus will be sustaining the CDA, expanding the CDA footprint, having others view the CDA as the flagship credential, and not just the best first step, but I view the CDA as essential to every early childhood teacher in our field. Whether they have a bachelor's degree or master's degree, it would be my vision that they would start with the CDA. And even if they didn't start there, that the CDA is part of their cadre of tools in their wheelhouse, because I know what it meant for me, and I know what it can mean to others. And I've had every degree created by our society for an early childhood professional. So I perhaps am well situated to talk about what the CDA means in our field. And it is a baseline of professional competence that everyone working with a young child should have before they enter that classroom on day one.
Absolutely, absolutely. We've interviewed several PD specialists, and they have all said something similar to what you've said. Despite the degree, that CDA and the training of the CDA, it just pales in comparison to what they learn as a college student. And that the CDA is the foundation. It gives you all the information that you need in order to work and be proficient as an early childhood education teacher.
Mm-hmm.
I was reflecting as you were talking on my bachelor's degree experience. So you have to remember, I came into the field as an adult. I mean, adult with a lot of experiences. I had been in the Air Force for 4 years, and so I had my CDA. I was working as a teacher and teacher aide in Head Start when I started my bachelor's degree program, and I was in a classroom with bright-eyed 18-year-olds, right? Right out of high school, had never even seen a child, let alone, know what to do in a classroom setting. And I saw them grappling with the content, right? Which is mostly academic, theory-based, learning about the field, all of those things that are essential to coming into our field, right? I'm not in any way trying to sidestep the importance of the education I received at the University of Alabama. But I will say this, after earning that credential, had I not had the CDA, I would not have known what to do on that first day in the teaching arena. And just think about it. I was prepared as a bachelor's degree teacher, but had only had one infant toddler course, right?
Oh, wow.
In all of that 4-year training, only one infant toddler course. But thank God I had those 3 child development courses at the community college while getting my CDA that prepared me to work with infants and toddlers, that prepared me to work with preschoolers, that prepared me to work with their parents and be a resource for them.
Right.
And I'm telling you, that preparation was very minimal at the bachelor's degree level.
Wow.
We've heard this before, and actually one of our PDS that we were interviewing, she said that she will always recommend to people read the Essentials book. Because anything that you think that you're going to learn in more detail from the Essentials book.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
Yeah. Well, that's fantastic. Since this is a podcast for the PD specialists, and we know that they are an essential component of the candidate's assessment, where do you see the network going for them in the next few years?
This is a group that I really want to target as the CEO of the council. I really want to think about ways in which we can build on their experience, really exploit their expertise, and think about how we can better arm them to be our eyes and ears in the field. In many ways, they represent the council when they're working with our candidates locally. And so it's a really unique perspective. And I want to think about it really deeply going forward. Do they have all of the tools that they need to adequately represent us? Are there some things that we can do to better arm them for questions that they may be asked in the field? And do we have the infrastructure across the nation that supports the PD specialist in a way that's valuable to them and valuable to our candidates? And so there's a lot of work to do. And I'm so grateful that you all are doing the work with them. And so you're essential to rolling out any plan that I might imagine around developing and further developing the network that you all have been doing such a great job as I learn about what you're doing. What I will say that I also think that we can tap into their expertise in other ways. We have thousands of PDSs across the country. And so think about if they were our foot soldiers around policy ideas, and if we had a very coherent policy agenda at the council, and then we'd have this army of PD specialists around who could talk to us and be our thought partners about how this policy may impact the states where they are or where our candidates reside, and how we can move them around a call to action. And so I am thinking about better articulating our policy positions as the interim CEO and what that might mean for PD specialists and how we might give them the tools necessary for them to be advocates, both for the workforce and for the children where our candidates are working. So I have great ideas, and I think that it's going to be a lot of fun, right? Filling out all the potential that we have with this wonderful resource of PD specialists around the country. And I have not even talked about how important they are to our candidates, right? It's so important that as candidates go through the process of being credentialed, that they see a professional who's committed to the field, who can launch them into professional development career lattice, like the person who I know who was my CDA representative. It's so important that their initial interaction with that professional is seamless, but it's also encouraging, that that person is not only professional, but respectful of this person who's entering our field, and that they leave feeling that they can do it, that they're accomplished, that they're competent to work with young children, and that they embrace our code of ethics, right? That they embrace that.
Absolutely.
And I think PD specialist is essential in that regard.
Wow. I have to say, ooh, Larissa, this sounds exciting.
I know. I'm so excited.
So many ideas, and that have been generated based on, from what you've just shared with us. Because you're right, we do need to involve our PD specialist network much more than we have. I think we can benefit from the collective wisdom, the collective expertise, because they're in a variety of positions and have, great experience, and they're seasoned professionals. And what other organization on the earth has a network like this?
Right, a collection of experts.
Yes.
That we can go to. And like you said, the foot soldiers who see what's happening right there and can tell us and report back and let us know, this is the trend that we're seeing and this is what's happening in my state.
All right, professional development specialists. You heard it straight from our new CEO. Get ready, lace up your bootstraps. Let's get ready to fly. We believe there are new things on the horizon for our community of practice, and we are so happy that Dr. Moore has spent some time with us and to share his vision, and that we were able to share his vision with you.
To say that we're pumped about what we've just talked about with Dr. Moore, I think is an understatement.
Yes.
So
I do cartwheels right now.
Yeah, right. And I hope that you guys are pumped too. I think this is excellent news for you guys. It's excellent news for us, and it's excellent news for the council. So Dr. Moore, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you a million times for sharing your time with us.
Yeah, it's my pleasure to be with you, Larissa and Shonda. Thank you so much. And a big thank you to all of our PD specialists across the country. We are so appreciative of the great work that you're doing, and keep up that great work. Thanks again for having me.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Well, for the Reflective Dialogue podcast, I'm Larissa.
And I'm Shonda.
Be well.
Bye now.